Every American military base has an unofficial code. It doesn't hang on a wall or sit in a field manual, but you hear it whispered from squad leaders to green recruits, passed like a secret that no one ever writes down. You can't recognize a true hero by his uniform or his medals, you'll know by the silence in his presence. I didn't understand it. Not then. I was younger, cockier, and worse, I was certain I knew what a warrior looked like. That day in West Texas, the sun was already high and merciless by mid-morning. Dust hung in the air like an old curse, turning every breath into a mouthful of grit. The desert stretched wide around us, a hollow, punishing place, just the kind of land the army loves to train in. My unit, all young, loud, and proud of it, was rotating through a precision engagement program, a fancy name for marksmanship boot camp for those who thought they could already shoot. We thought we were the sharpest in the batch. Second Lieutenant Cordero, my buddy, even joked that they should just pin our qualifications and send us home. We were impatient to prove ourselves, to rack up the kind of scores that made careers. Then she arrived. I didn't catch her name. Maybe she never gave it. The instructors called her the civilian observer, but the whispers started fast, more mockery than curiosity. She was the oldest by decades, probably somewhere north of 60. White hair bound in a tight knot, sleeves rolled up past elbows knotted with wiry muscle. She looked like someone's grandmother had wandered onto the range by mistake, dragging a rifle that belonged in a pawn shop window. Her rifle caught my eye first, old, battered, the metal pitted and dulled, stock worn smooth with use. The serial number had been filed down to a scar of bare steel. But strangest of all was the mark by the trigger guard, a tiny, etched coil of a snake. Not a standard insignia. Not any unit I knew. She didn't speak to us, not once. She laid prone on the range, set her cheek to the buttstock, and started her work. We laughed. To us, it was absurd. Her posture was wrong, no one trained in any branch shot like that. Elbows too wide, chin too tight. It looked clumsy, almost careless. The young privates called her Aunt May with a gun. I might have been the first to say it, but it caught on fast. She ignored us. But when the first shot cracked the air, it cut through our chuckles like a blade through cloth. We didn't know it yet, but something in that sound, too clean, too precise, should have warned us. But we were too proud. She kept firing, methodical and indifferent to our presence. We stood there, red-faced and stupid, not realizing that each bullet stitched a pattern we didn't yet have the eyes to see. I remember my grandfather's words, clear as day. He'd told me once, back when I was a kid playing army in the backyard. If you want to know who's deadliest on a range, watch the one they're laughing at. Odds are, they know something the rest don't. I wish I'd remembered that sooner. The silence came slowly, spreading across the line of shooters like a shadow at dusk. Our laughter dried up, replaced by a tightening unease, the sense that we were standing too close to something we didn't understand. We wouldn't know her name. Not yet. But we should have known her presence. The days on that range blurred together, heat, sweat, and the sharp retort of rifles echoing against the empty plains. But she stayed in my mind, a quiet wedge of discomfort I couldn't shake. By the second day, the mockery turned meaner. The more precise her shots, the louder the contempt. Randall made sure of it. Sergeant First Class Randall wasn't a man to be questioned. Career Army, square jaw, regulation haircut, and eyes like river stones, cold and unmoving. He ruled the firing line, and if he set the tone, we followed. He didn't like her. Maybe it was her stillness. Or the fact that despite all our sneers, she never missed. Every shot landed where it was supposed to, not just dead center, but precisely spaced, as if each bullet knew where its predecessor had gone and refused to crowd it. Randall called her out during the afternoon rotation. "You're throwing off cohesion," he barked in front of all of us. "This is a military course. Not a nursing home. She said nothing. "So here's the new rule," Randall declared, gesturing like a preacher before his congregation. "You'll shoot last. After the soldiers finish. You want to play sniper, you do it when no one's watching." I laughed then, a brittle, uneasy sound. Others joined in. It was easier that way. She just nodded once and stepped back. But that evening, long after the sun dipped low and painted the sky with ash and blood, she stayed on the range. Alone. The rest of us had hit chow or bunked down. But her silhouette remained, stretched out on the dirt, rifle cradled like a relic. I stayed behind, just out of sight, curious in spite of myself. She wasn't just firing. She was running a sequence, a rhythm, a pattern, but not one any of us had been taught. She'd fire, shift slightly, fire again. It was too methodical for improvisation. It was muscle memory, the kind that gets burned into bone over years, not months. The shots came at precise intervals, like a metronome, but uneven, short pause, then a pair of quick shots, then another pause, longer, almost like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. I didn't understand it. But it was unsettling in a way I couldn't explain. Up in the control tower, Captain Whitaker noticed too. He'd been watching from the second level all afternoon, a coffee mug cooling by his elbow, binoculars set aside, unread report stacked on his desk. Whitaker had the eyes of a man who'd seen too much and forgotten how to rest. He wasn't just an officer, he'd been through black ops circuits, places no one officially admitted existed. That night, after watching her for hours, Whitaker made a call. Not through official channels, no rank, no clearance, just an old contact he hadn't spoken to in a decade. When the call ended, he sat still, staring at his phone until the display went dark. Then he looked out at the range where her shots still echoed faint against the hills. Later, he showed me the text he received back. "If she's shooting that pattern, you're not training her, she's reminding herself she's still alive. Only one unit did that. And they're all supposed to be dead." That chilled me in a way I hadn't felt before. On the third day, the wind came. Texas wind doesn't just blow. It howls like something alive, hot and sharp, dragging dust into your teeth, pushing bullets off their path like a bully in a crowded hall. At 600 meters, even our best shooters couldn't hit center. Hell, most couldn't hit the target at all. Randall stood there, grinning with that same smirk he wore whenever he saw someone break under pressure. "Anyone who can thread this wind past 600 gets the rest of the day off," he said. A challenge, sure, but the kind that hides a sneer, knowing no one could claim it. She stepped forward. The laughter bubbled up again. Familiar, reflexive, almost desperate. She took her position without a word. Laid prone, adjusted nothing, not her sight, not her scope. Just one deep breath. The first shot rang out. Dead center. The second, center. The third, still center. The range went quiet. The wind still screamed, but no one made a sound. Captain Whitaker climbed down from the tower, boots crunching the gravel, his face unreadable. He stopped a few feet from her prone form and spoke low, almost reverent. "That's Viper doctrine," he said. "Only 5 people on Earth ever shot like that." We stared. The term meant nothing to most of us, but the way Whitaker said it, the way his voice hollowed, told us everything we needed to know. Viper doctrine. She stood slowly, rifle cradled. Not proud, not smug. Just, done. No one laughed after that. The day after, something in the air changed. None of us spoke to her, not because we didn't want to, but because we didn't know how to. What do you say to someone who just showed you that everything you thought you knew about precision and power was a child's game to them? She still came to the range. Still fired last, still alone. But we didn't mock her. Not anymore. Some things, like reverence, arrive too late. Randall avoided her after that. He kept his orders professional, clipped. I caught him once watching her from the corner of his eye, as though she might suddenly level that battered rifle at him instead of the target line. I think he was afraid. He'd never admit it, but I saw it. But it was Captain Whitaker who changed most. Whitaker spent hours in the tower now, binoculars in hand, tracking her movements, watching every minute detail of how she handled the rifle. He'd scribble notes on a yellow pad, cross them out, start again. None of it made sense to him. The control tower was closed to us, but Whitaker called me up once. I think he saw me watching her the other night and knew I was curious enough to understand. He handed me a sheet of paper, crumpled at the corners from too many readings. It was a list of coordinates. Grid references. Alongside each, a time interval. Seconds. Minutes. What is this? I asked. Kill pattern, he said, voice low. But not like we know. It's like a ghost's itinerary. I didn't understand then. I only understood later when I looked it up. The coordinates matched old records. Classified strikes from conflicts that officially never happened. Every position was a kill confirmed by a sniper team. But the times, they weren't operation clocks. They were memory. She was shooting a sequence that mapped to every confirmed kill her unit had made. It wasn't practice. It wasn't even training. It was remembrance. And the message Whitaker had received? I kept reading it over in my head. Only one unit did that. And they're all supposed to be dead. I asked him, quietly, carefully, what unit? He shook his head. You won't find it on any manifest. They called them the Vipers. Blackest of Black Ops. Killed in places we're not supposed to admit we've been. No patches, no records. Just ghosts. And there's one doctrine they followed: never forget the shot. Every life you took, you honor it by remembering exactly where, when, how. That sat in my stomach like a stone. I tried watching her shoot after that, but I couldn't. Not without feeling like an intruder on a ritual, a trespasser in some sacred, grim litany. 3 days later, just before dawn, I heard the blades before I saw them. Black helicopters, unmarked, quiet, heavy with intent, descended on the far end of the base. We'd heard rumors about such arrivals, but never seen them ourselves. She was waiting by the landing zone, rifle slung across her shoulder. A man in black fatigues stepped out first, his face obscured beneath a low cap. They didn't salute, didn't shake hands. They just looked at each other, nodded once. Then she boarded without a word. By the time the sun rose, she was gone. No ceremony. No farewell. Just a vacancy where something unexplainable had stood. That morning, Whitaker gathered us all at the range. No formal orders, no inspections, just us, standing awkwardly in a half-circle. On the steel table where she'd fired, there was a single case. Plain, battered, military green. A stenciled label marked the lid. Viper 0, not forgotten. No one touched it. No one dared. Veterans started arriving later that morning. Men we didn't recognize, old, scarred, some limping, others hard-eyed and silent. They placed things on the table: patches, medals, spent casings. No speeches. No explanations. Just offerings. That's when the story started circulating. Whispered, unsure, half-believed. That she'd been the last of her unit. That her real name was scrubbed from every file. That she wasn't just a legend, she was the ledger, carrying the names of every life she'd taken, every brother lost. They said her rifle, the battered thing with the coiled snake, was taken to the Covert Operations Museum in Virginia. No plaque, no story, just sealed glass and a silent warning: some weapons are monuments, not tools. A fund was established that same week, quietly, under the name the Viper 0 Foundation. No press release, no gala, just an anonymous mission statement. To train soldiers in the skills no one can teach openly. To remember those who are supposed to be forgotten. At night, I sometimes thought I heard a single shot in the distance. The instructors said it was the wind. But the old hands, the veterans, they said it was her. A ghost salute. We still tell recruits the same line, though few understand it. Excellence doesn't need an audience. Heroes don't wear their stories. But you'll know them, because silence follows. Weeks passed. The base returned to its rhythms, marches, drills, gunfire stitched into the air like the day's breath, but something stayed with me. It was the silence. Not the absence of sound, but the kind that lingers after a presence is gone, the space someone like her leaves behind. No one spoke her name. I don't think any of us knew it. Randall pretended like she'd never been there. He carried on barking commands, but his voice lost its edge, like he was performing for himself, not us. Whitaker, he was different. He wasn't the same officer. He stopped watching us like a superior watching subordinates. Instead, he watched us like a man measuring children against ghosts. Sometimes, in the late hours, I'd find him standing on the control tower platform, staring at the horizon. No binoculars. No coffee. Just him and the wind. I asked him once, when the dust hung heavy in the twilight. "Sir, who was she really?" He didn't answer immediately. His gaze stayed locked on the distant hills, where the light failed and the night crept slow and patient. Then he said, "Someone who carried too many names." "What do you mean?" I asked. Whitaker turned to me, the lines of his face carved deeper than I'd ever noticed before. "Every shot she fired," he said, "she remembered. Every life taken. She carried them like a roll call in her bones. That's what the Vipers did. Kill, yes, but never forget." I nodded, though I didn't fully understand. I wanted to. "She wasn't practicing," he added. "She was keeping them alive. In memory." He didn't need to say more. I felt it, the weight of remembrance, how it could hollow a person out, leave them wrapped in silence so thick even the wind couldn't cut through it. Later, I found myself visiting the range alone. I'd lie prone where she had, the dirt still marked faintly where her elbows had pressed down. I tried to mimic her grip, her posture, wrong by every manual I knew, but it didn't matter. I couldn't replicate her. None of us could. That's when it hit me, she wasn't shooting for precision. She was rewalking a battlefield only she could see. Each shot a footstep, each grouping a memory pinned to a coordinate, a face, a name. I felt small there. Smaller than I ever had. Eventually, my rotation ended, and I left West Texas behind. But the story of her, the Viper Zero, followed me. It followed all of us. When I got stationed on another base in Virginia, I made a quiet pilgrimage to the Covert Operations Museum. The place was unassuming, an old government building converted into quiet halls of artifacts that had no place in official records. No one guided you. No tours. Just displays in glass, each one labeled with the briefest note, if anything at all. And there it was. Her rifle. Encased in bulletproof glass, resting on black velvet. Still worn, still battered. The metal dulled, the wood worn to a ghost of grain. No name on the plaque. Just a strip of brushed steel that read, Viper Zero. Silence is the legacy. The coiled snake was still there, faint but defiant, like it was staring back at you, reminding you that even forgotten things remember themselves. I stood there for hours, watching it. Tourists came and went, barely glancing. No one knew what it was. But I did. And before I left, I pressed my hand lightly against the glass, as if to say, I remember too. In time, the Viper Zero Foundation grew. Soldiers whispered about it. A fund, a training initiative, deeply off-record, that trained select operatives in skills no manual could teach. Word was that instructors came and went, always masked in anonymity. Some said they were former operatives. Some said they were ghosts themselves. And every year, on the anniversary of her last shot on the range, veterans would gather. Uninvited, uncoordinated. They'd come to the range in West Texas, stand in silence, leave their patches, their medals, spent casings. A ritual with no name. No cameras. No speeches. Just presence. They called it 0 Day. Because when you reach 0, 0 targets left, 0 lives unremembered, you aren't just a number. You're the ledger. And that's what she was. That's what she still is, somewhere, if you believe the wind carries voices. Sometimes when the night is too quiet, when the wind stills just long enough, I swear I hear it. One shot. Somewhere out past the hills. Like a ghost keeping time. I've come to believe that's what she wanted us to know. Heroes don't need stories. They need memory. And memory is made of silence. Time passed, but the memory of her didn't. Not for me. Years later, after I'd left the service, I still caught myself thinking of her when I stepped into quiet places, ranges, hillsides, or any wide space where a rifle's echo could disappear into sky and dirt. I carried a ritual of my own, though no one taught it to me. Every base I visited, every veterans hall or shooting range, I'd ask around, careful and quiet. Anyone here ever hear of Viper Zero? Most shook their heads, eyes blank. But sometimes, just sometimes, I'd catch a flicker in someone's gaze, a hesitation, as if the name stirred something they weren't sure was real. Once, in a back room of a VFW hall in North Carolina, I met an old Marine. His eyes were cloudy, knees bad, but his hands still carried the steadiness of someone who'd held a rifle long past the point of comfort. I asked him the question, the same way I always did. He stared at his glass of bourbon a long while before answering. "You don't meet Viper Zero," he said. "You just realize too late that you did." I pressed. He wouldn't say more. But before I left, he dug into his old rucksack and handed me a small brass casing. Spent. Marked with a coil hand etched at the base. "Only 5 people ever got those," he muttered. "I was too young to understand then. Keep it. Maybe it'll tell you something I couldn't." I still have it. I keep it on a chain around my neck, not because I knew her, but because I didn't. And I need to remind myself that forgetting is easy when you convince yourself memory belongs to someone else. The Viper Zero Foundation remained a rumor most places. But in the right circles, quiet ones, where names meant less than reputation, it held weight. They trained operatives on how to disappear. How to be effective without witness. To carry skill as burden, not badge. No uniforms. No medals. Only scars. One of the Foundation's sayings circulated among certain units. Silence is not absence. Silence is debt. I never got invited to one of their trainings. I wasn't elite. But I kept hearing of soldiers who went in sharp and came out quieter. Not broken. Just heavier. There was a weight to knowledge too dangerous to wear openly. Years later, a friend in military intelligence slipped me a scan of an old black and white photograph. Grainy, poor quality, taken on a jungle airstrip. A squad, half a dozen figures, faces obscured, some turned away from the camera, some shadowed by hats and angles. But one stood out. A woman, small, compact, rifle slung loose, standing slightly apart from the others. Someone had scrawled in the margin in faded ink. Viper Zero. No name. No date. Just that. I kept the photo. I pinned it above my workbench in my garage. My wife once asked me who it was. I told her the truth. I don't know. But I owe her something. She didn't understand. I didn't expect her to. Because what I owe isn't just to her, it's to every name that never made it into the papers, every face never carved in stone. There's a story Whitaker told me before I transferred out of West Texas. He said that in some corners of Black Ops, they keep an unofficial tally of operatives who disappear, not killed, just gone. People like her. Some say she didn't board that helicopter to retire. Some say she was recalled. That somewhere, in the places we deny existing, she's still alive. Watching. Waiting. Because ghosts like her don't retire. They just fade until needed. The last time I saw Whitaker, his hair had thinned, his skin paled with the kind of sickness no one admits out loud. But his eyes were sharp. He told me, "If you ever hear one shot when no one should be shooting, just once, clear and clean, that's her. Keeping score." I asked him, "Why does she keep shooting?" Whitaker smiled, thin and distant. "Because memory needs a trigger." I never forgot that. And on some nights, when I'm home, when the wind moves strange across the trees, I swear I hear it. One crack, like a rifle's voice echoing from nowhere. And I pause. I listen. Because that shot doesn't mean someone's dead. It means someone is remembered. There was a night, not long after Whitaker died, when I decided I had to go back. I couldn't let the story end in a museum behind glass. I needed to stand where she stood, breathe where she breathed, if only to understand what memory felt like when it was written in the language of bullets and silence. I drove west. The desert didn't change much. West Texas was still as vast, still as cruel. The sky felt heavier there, the horizon a boundary you couldn't cross but that stared at you all the same. I arrived at the old base under cover of dusk. The precision engagement program had moved on years ago, relocated to another corner of nowhere, but the range remained. Quiet. Abandoned. I crossed the perimeter fence, flashlight low, stepping between patches of dry grass and scattered brass casings long buried in dust. The steel tables rusted, the targets shredded or collapsed in the wind. But I knew where to go. The place where she lay prone. I could still see it, faint, as if the ground itself remembered the weight of her elbows, the press of her boots. I lay down there. Pressed my cheek against the dirt, raised imaginary sights to my eye. And I waited. At first, there was nothing. Just wind and the faint murmur of insects. Then something shifted. A hush that wasn't wind. A stillness that pressed into my chest, as if the land itself held its breath. I don't believe in ghosts, not the kind that rattle chains or whisper your name in the dark, but I believe in presence. And she was there. Not as a shadow or a sound, but as a density. Like the air thickened in her memory, like the earth couldn't let go. I imagined her pulling the trigger, each shot not a kill, but a name. A name of someone taken. A name of someone lost. I thought of the old coordinates Whitaker showed me. Of the pattern she shot in. A memorial, stitched not in stone or plaque, but in bullet trajectories traced across years and continents. I wondered if that was her ritual. Not to forget, but to remind the world that every shot has a shadow. I stayed there until the stars burned overhead, until the moon climbed thin and sharp as a blade. That's when I heard it. One shot. No rifle near me. No shooters for miles. But clear. Sharp. A single crack that cut the night in half. I froze. Then I stood, heart hammering, but not from fear. I wasn't alone. I whispered aloud, not expecting an answer, just needing to say it. Viper 0. Not forgotten. The wind answered, moving in a way that felt less like weather and more like acknowledgement. I left the range before sunrise, but before I stepped off the dirt, I placed the brass casing the old Marine had given me on the steel table. An offering. A recognition. Back home, I couldn't explain it to anyone. Not fully. But I started a habit. Once a year, I return to that place. Always alone. Always on the same date. And I listen. Some years I hear nothing. Just wind and old echoes. But some years, like that first, I hear the shot. A single, precise voice in the dark. I'm older now. Knees stiff, hands slower. But every time I hear it, I remember what Whitaker said. Memory needs a trigger. And I realize, she's not just remembering for herself. She's remembering for us. For all of us too afraid to carry the names. Because in the end, Viper Zero wasn't about death. She was about remembrance. About ensuring no face vanished, no life became a mere number in a ledger no one read. Somewhere out there, I think she's still shooting. Not at enemies. At memory. Etching it into the air with each shot. So that no one, not even the ghosts, will ever truly be forgotten. I never knew her name. None of us did. But names are just handles people grip when they need to define you. She didn't need one. She was the last whisper of something our system pretended never existed. Yet I still remember the code they passed down, the one we barely understood back then. You can't recognize a true hero by his uniform or medals, you'll know by the silence in his presence. I understand it now. She taught me without ever speaking. That silence isn't emptiness, it's the weight of memory carried with dignity. It's the echo that follows those who refuse to forget what others bury. They say when wind cuts sharp across the West Texas hills, if you're still enough, you'll hear it. A single rifle shot, no echo, no follow-up. It isn't a warning. It's a salute. We tell the new recruits that. The instructors pass it like folklore, and maybe that's all it is to them. But I know better. Because every year I return to that range. Every year I listen. And every year, I carry those names, unknown, unspoken, but never lost. That's the real shot that matters. That's the shot Viper Zero left behind. Not one fired at a target, but one fired into time itself. So we would remember. So we would never forget.